Late one quiet evening, a strange question entered the mind of a physicist, and that question would later confuse scientists, philosophers, and curious thinkers all over the world. The question was simple, yet deeply disturbing. What is reality when no one is looking? The physicist was Schrödinger, one of the brilliant minds exploring the strange new world of quantum physics. At that time, scientists had already discovered that the smallest particles in the universe behaved in ways that no one expected. Electrons did not act like tiny solid balls. They behaved like waves of possibility. Sometimes they were here, sometimes they were there, and sometimes they seemed to exist in many places at once. This strange idea confused even the smartest scientists, because in the normal world, things do not behave like that. A chair is either in the room or it is not. A door is either open or closed. A coin is either heads or tails. Reality seems clear and definite, but the quantum world follows very different rules. Particles can exist in many possible states at the same time, at least until someone observes them. This strange rule is known as the observer effect, and this is where Schrödinger asked a question that sounded almost like a riddle. To explain how strange quantum physics had become, he imagined a very unusual experiment. In his thought experiment, a cat is placed inside a sealed box. The box is completely closed. No one can see inside it. Inside the box, there is also a tiny radioactive particle, a detector, and a small vial of poison. If the radioactive particle breaks, the detector breaks the vial, and the poison is released. If the particle does not decay, nothing happens, and the cat remains safe. The problem is that in the quantum world, the particle can exist in two states at once, decayed and not decayed, and if that is true, something impossible seems to follow. Until someone opens the box and looks inside, the cat may exist in two states as well, alive and dead at the same time. The idea sounds absurd, almost like something from a strange dream. But Schrödinger created this thought experiment to show how mysterious the quantum world truly is. Because according to quantum theory, reality may not settle into a single outcome until it is observed. In other words, the act of observation might change the state of reality itself. This idea leads to an unsettling thought. What exactly happens in the moment before observation? What is reality doing when no one is watching, in the quiet darkness of that sealed box? The cat's fate seems undecided, not fully alive, not fully dead, just existing in a cloud of possibilities. Only one event can change that situation. Someone opening the box, someone looking inside, someone observing, and in that exact moment, the mystery collapses into a single outcome. The possibilities disappear. One reality remains. But this strange idea raises a deeper and more unsettling question. If observation can change the state of a tiny quantum particle, could observation also influence the world on a larger scale? Could the simple act of looking play a role in shaping reality itself? For many scientists, this question sounded impossible, yet the strange laws of quantum physics continue to suggest that reality may not be as fixed and solid as it appears. Instead, it may be something more fluid, more mysterious, more connected to the observer than anyone once believed. And perhaps the most surprising part of the story is this: the cat inside the box may not be the greatest mystery. The greatest mystery may be the one standing outside the box, the observer who decides to open it, because in that quiet moment of observation, something extraordinary might be happening. The universe may be choosing what becomes real. And that leads to a question that scientists, philosophers, and curious minds are still asking today. Is reality simply waiting for someone to look? The strange story of the cat in the box left many people confused. Some thought it was only a strange idea meant to challenge scientists. But behind that unusual thought experiment was a deeper message about how the universe truly behaves. The physicist Schrödinger never meant people to believe that a real cat could be alive and dead at the same time. Instead, he wanted to show how strange the rules of the quantum world had become. Because by the early 20th century, scientists had already discovered something shocking about the smallest parts of reality. Atoms and particles did not behave like normal objects. They followed rules that seemed mysterious, unpredictable, and sometimes even impossible to imagine. In the everyday world, everything appears stable and clear. A tree stands in one place, a stone rests on the ground, a glass sits quietly on a table. These objects do not exist in many states at once. They appear solid and certain, but deep inside matter, at the level of tiny particles, reality behaves very differently. Scientists discovered that particles such as electrons do not always exist in a single fixed state. Instead, they exist in a range of possibilities at the same time. This strange condition is called quantum superposition. Superposition means that before something is measured or observed, it can exist in multiple possible states, not one clear reality, but many potential realities at once. This idea was difficult for many scientists to accept, because it suggested that the universe is not as simple as it appears. Imagine a coin spinning in the air. While it spins, it is not clearly heads or tails. Both possibilities exist until the coin finally lands. Quantum particles behave in a somewhat similar way until someone measures them. They exist as a cloud of probabilities rather than a single definite outcome. This discovery led scientists to one of the most puzzling ideas in modern physics. Observation seems to play an important role in deciding what actually happens. This strange phenomenon is connected to what scientists call the observer effect. Experiments began to show that the act of measuring a particle could influence how it behaves. Particles that acted like waves suddenly behaved like particles once they were observed. It was as if the universe changed its behavior the moment someone tried to look too closely. This puzzled many researchers because in classical science, observation was supposed to be passive. Scientists believed they were simply watching reality, not affecting it. But quantum experiments began to suggest something very different. Observation might not be separate from reality. It might be part of the process that creates it. For many physicists, this idea felt uncomfortable. Science had always tried to describe a universe that existed independently of human perception. But now the boundary between observer and reality seemed less clear. This is why the thought experiment of Schrödinger's cat became so famous. It forced people to imagine what quantum rules would look like if they applied to larger objects. And when people imagined a cat existing in two states at once, the mystery of quantum physics suddenly became impossible to ignore. The thought experiment acted like a mirror, reflecting a deeper question back to humanity. What is the true nature of reality before it is observed? Is the universe already decided? Or does reality remain open and uncertain until an observation takes place? These questions began to move beyond physics. Philosophers started thinking about them. Thinkers began wondering about the role of perception and awareness. And slowly, a powerful idea began to form. Perhaps the universe is not simply a machine running on fixed rules. Perhaps it is something more dynamic, more interactive, more mysterious than anyone had ever imagined. And if that possibility is true, then the observer may not just be watching the universe. The observer may be participating in its unfolding story, which leads to an even deeper mystery waiting to be explored. If observation changes the behavior of tiny particles, what exactly is happening in the moment of observation itself, and who, or what, is the true observer of reality? As the observer stepped back from the thought of the cat in the box, a strange realization began to take shape. The universe at the quantum level was not a fixed, unchanging place. It was a world of possibilities, probabilities, and potential, and the act of looking, of measuring, of paying attention, could change everything. This strange principle is called the observer effect. Experiments with tiny particles revealed something astonishing. When no one watched, particles moved like waves, spreading out in many directions at once. They existed in multiple states simultaneously, but the moment a scientist tried to measure or observe them, the particles collapsed into a single state. It was as if the universe paused, waited for the observer, and then chose one outcome. The observer, in the story, realized something remarkable. Observation might not just be passive, it might be an active force, a way of shaping reality itself. The observer began to imagine that the strange cat in the box was not just about cats. It was about the very nature of existence. Every moment of awareness, every act of looking, every focus of attention might be part of a much larger pattern. Scientists who studied the observer effect were both amazed and uneasy. For centuries, physics had taught that the universe operated independently, that humans were outside observers, simply watching the clockwork of reality. Now, it seemed, the observer could no longer remain separate. The observer's attention, their act of looking, might play a crucial role in what actually occurs. This led to questions that went far beyond the lab. Could the observer effect apply only to electrons and particles, or could it influence larger systems, even the world? we see every day. The observer in the story felt a shiver of awe. If observation truly affects outcomes at the smallest level, then perhaps consciousness itself is woven into the fabric of reality. Every choice, every decision, every perception may interact with the universe in subtle ways. The act of noticing, of paying attention, may not just be a human habit. It may be a fundamental force of nature. The observer thought about the implications. If reality waits for observation to decide its outcome, then the universe is not merely a stage in which life unfolds. It is an interactive process, a dance between what exists and what is perceived. The particles, the cat, the boxes, the experiments, they were all windows into a profound truth. The observer effect was not just about quantum mechanics. It was a clue to understanding the mysterious connection between consciousness and reality. And it raised the most compelling question of all. If attention can shape the outcome of particles, could human awareness influence the direction of life itself? Could the choices we make, the moments we notice, even the act of being present, guide the unfolding of reality? The observer shivered, realizing that the universe might not simply be out there, it might also be with us, participating in every thought, every glance, every act of seeing. In that moment, the simple idea of opening a box revealed a profound mystery. Not about cats, not about particles, but about existence itself. The universe might not just be observed, it might be created, in part, through observation, and with that realization, the story of Schrödinger's cat transformed into a meditation on life, awareness, and the extraordinary power of simply paying attention. As the observer reflected on the strange power of observation, the story began to stretch beyond the walls of the laboratory. It was no longer only about particles or the cat in the box. It was about consciousness itself. Some scientists believed the observer effect was purely physical, that particles changed because of measurement devices, instruments, or experimental setups, but others began to wonder if something deeper was at work. Could human awareness, the very act of conscious attention, influence what becomes real? The observer in the story started to imagine a universe that was not separate from awareness, a universe that might respond to the mind as much as to physical instruments. Thinkers and philosophers began asking questions that science alone could not answer. If consciousness can influence reality at a quantum level, then perhaps awareness is more than a byproduct of biology. Perhaps it is a fundamental part of the universe. The observer noticed something extraordinary. Human perception does not merely record events. It may play an active role in shaping which possibilities become reality. A thought here, a focus there. A decision made, small actions that ripple outward and interact with the world. Some spiritual traditions had long suggested that awareness and attention hold power. Now, science was beginning to hint at something similar. The observer considered the strange connection between the physical world and the mind. It was as if the universe and consciousness were dancing together. Particles, waves, probabilities, and possibilities were not just abstract ideas. They were a reminder that the act of noticing, the act of being present, might be part of a larger, creative process. This idea changed the way the observer looked at the world. Ordinary moments felt alive with hidden potential. Every glance, every perception, every question seemed to carry weight. It was no longer simply about seeing reality. It was about participating in it. The observer began to understand that human awareness is like a lens through which the universe becomes more defined, more organized, more real. And this realization brought both wonder and humility. Because if awareness shapes outcomes, then life is not a passive experience. It is interactive, collaborative, a dialogue between the observer and the universe. The observer imagined the implications for everyday life. Could attention guide decisions, influence experiences, or even shape destiny in subtle ways? The line between science and philosophy blurred. The universe became not just a stage for events, but a responsive, living system, sensitive to perception, choice, and consciousness. And in that realization, the story of Schrödinger's cat transformed yet again. It was no longer just a quantum puzzle or a strange experiment. It was a window into the deep mystery of existence. The observer understood that the greatest discoveries were not only in laboratories or equations, they were in the act of observing itself. The story left the audience with a quiet, thrilling thought. What if human awareness is not separate from reality, but is woven into its very fabric? shaping, guiding, and participating in the unfolding of the universe. And with that, the observer prepared to step further into the mystery, to explore not just particles or cats, but the hidden connections between consciousness, life, and the infinite possibilities that lie just beyond perception. As the observers stepped back from the mysteries of particles and observation, a new understanding began to emerge. The strange rules of quantum physics were no longer confined to laboratories or abstract thought experiments. They began to feel connected to everyday life. The observer realized that humans constantly interact with reality through attention, focus, and awareness. Every decision we make, every thought we hold, every moment we pay attention to, guides the way life unfolds. It was as if, in some subtle way, the principles that govern quantum particles also applied to the possibilities in human life. Just like the cat in the box, possibilities exist all around us. Many outcomes coexist, waiting, hovering in a cloud of potential, and just as a particle chooses its state when observed, life seems to narrow possibilities into one path. When we focus our attention, make choices, or act, the observer began to see patterns in the world around them. Moments of awareness seemed to have a weight, a power. Even small decisions could ripple outward, influencing events, shaping relationships, and guiding experiences. Attention directed by intention became like a force in the universe. Where focus went, outcomes followed. The observer imagined reality as a canvas of infinite potential, and human awareness as the brush that gently guides which possibilities appear. Life was no longer a fixed story unfolding passively. It was a dynamic process, shaped by observation, perception, and participation. The observer realized that this connection was not magic. It was subtle, natural, and grounded in the mysterious patterns of how the universe operates. Awareness does not impose outcomes. It reveals them, organizes them, and interacts with the underlying potential of reality. The observer thought about the choices people make every day. Simple moments of attention, moments of curiosity, moments of conscious focus. All these tiny actions were threads weaving the fabric of life. And the more present a person was, the more clearly the pattern of life seemed to emerge. It became clear that consciousness and reality were deeply intertwined. One could not fully exist without the other. The observer felt a sense of awe. Every person carries the same potential to participate in reality, to guide possibilities, and to bring hidden potential into being. The universe was not something distant, not something entirely separate. It was responsive, interactive, and sensitive to awareness. And just as Schrödinger's cat revealed the strange nature of quantum possibilities, every human choice, every act of attention, revealed the profound connection between consciousness and the unfolding of life. The observer smiled at the thought. Perhaps the mystery of the universe is not only about distant stars, tiny particles, or sealed boxes. Perhaps it is about the simple, everyday act of paying attention, of being present, aware, and conscious. Of the choices we make, reality, it seemed, was not only observed, it was influenced, shaped, and co-created by the observer. And with that realization, the observer understood that the journey into understanding reality had only just begun. The possibilities were endless, and the connection between life and consciousness was deeper and more mysterious than anyone could have imagined. As the observer reflected on all that had been discovered, the story came full circle. The sealed box of Schrödinger's cat was no longer just a strange experiment. It had become a mirror for the universe itself. Inside the box, countless possibilities existed. Outside the box, a curious mind waited, ready to observe, and in that quiet tension, something extraordinary happened. Reality seemed to pause, holding all potential outcomes in balance, until the observer looked, until attention was directed. Then, and only then, one outcome appeared. The possibilities collapsed into a single reality. Alive or dead, choice or chance, outcome or possibility. The observer realized that this moment was more than a thought experiment. It was a glimpse into the very nature of existence. Much of reality, it seemed, exists beyond what we can see, beyond what we can measure or predict. And yet, observation brings a slice of possibility into being. The observer understood something even more profound. If the act of observing could influence the outcome of a tiny particle, then perhaps consciousness plays a role in shaping reality at every level. Every glance, every thought, every focused intention could be part of the universe's unfolding story. The observer looked around at the world, at the trees, the sky, the faces of people, and suddenly, everything seemed alive, with potential, not fixed, not certain, not separate, but interactive, dynamic, and connected. The boundaries between observer and observed seemed to blur. Reality was not simply something out there waiting to be discovered. It was a living process, unfolding through the dialogue between awareness and the universe. The cat in the box became a symbol, not of confusion or absurdity, but of participation, presence, and the extraordinary power of observation. And finally, the observer asked the question that would remain long after the video ended. If the universe waits for observation to settle possibilities, then what role does human consciousness play in shaping the world we experience? Are we merely witnesses of reality, or are we active participants in its creation? Perhaps the greatest mystery is not the cat inside the box, not the particle, not the outcome, but the observer themselves, because in the simple act of looking, of paying attention, of being aware, the universe may not just be observed, it may be becoming real, and the story leaves the audience with a thought that lingers, a quiet, thrilling question. Is reality waiting for us to notice it, or are we shaping it with every act of awareness?